And hello, YouTube. This is Thomas Judge back once again with yet another installment of my ongoing weekly series, Valiant to the Last, in which I go through the entire Valiant universe of comics, one series at a time, and specifically one deluxe edition at a time. As of now, we have covered every single deluxe edition in the entire Valiant universe. And in fact, we've covered every mainline installment ever since the 2012 reboot. What that means is for these last few videos of this series, we're going to be looking at out of continuity parts of the Valiant universe. And so with no further ado, today we're diving into Ninjak versus the Valiant universe. Now there are two ways that I need to talk about this. One is via talking about the movie, which we'll do first, and then I'll talk about the comics. So let's start with the movie. What do I mean by the Ninjak versus Valiant Universe movie? Surely there's only ever been one Valiant movie, which was Bloodshot. Well, that's not quite the case. Back when DMG Entertainment took over the Valiant Entertainment or Valiant Entertainment as a company back in 2018, there was a live action straight to web series kind of movie, a 6 episode installment thing that was created by Bat in the Sun Productions. This series was intended as an introduction to the Valiant universe and its characters, but is not in continuity. Now, if you go online, you can find this entire thing available as one movie length YouTube video. It's about 70 minutes long or so, called Ninjak versus the Valiant Universe, which the entire thing is available for free. And this is what we're going to be talking about now. So, I watched this. I watched this recently just before reading the comics. Um, it's definitely out of continuity, and I know that for a fact because the actual comics, the very first page of the first issue states very clearly this is not in the normal continuity. But then where exactly does this fit in, and what exactly do you need to know? Well, the first thing I will say is this requires you to have a fair bit of knowledge of the Valiant universe. I watched this with my partner who knows nothing about Valiant whatsoever. And halfway through, she was like, "What is going on? Who are these people? What are their powers? What is happening?" Which is totally fair. It's kind of like a low budget version of watching The Avengers without watching any of the movies that led up to it. And in that sense, it does feel kind of rushed in a narrative sense. We'll come back to that in a second, but another thing I want to point out is what I mean when I say low budget. This feels low budget. It's not bad. I mean, given what they had to work with, this is absolutely fair, but it does feel like a low budget straight to DVD or straight to web series movie. In that sense, it reminds me a lot of Mortal Kombat. If you've seen the Mortal Kombat movies from 1995 and 1997, like they're a lot of fun. I watched them recently on Amazon Prime, and the first one especially is just awesome. It's great fun. The soundtrack is banging, the acting is ridiculous, the fight scenes are terrible, but it's just loads and loads of fun. And that's with having a really like ridiculously low budget, a really poor, shoddy production quality, terrible CGI, all of which are true for Ninja versus the Valiant Universe. But it can be done in a fun way, and Mortal Kombat kind of proves that. It's a film that's so bad it's good in a lot of ways. Ninja versus the Valiant Universe isn't quite as low budget in that sense. I mean, CGI is a lot cheaper now, I guess. You can get a lot more done. But just in terms of the lighting, the pacing, the set pieces, the costumes, the action, it's still very, very low budget, which is fine. And I'm not going to complain about that too much. It was still definitely watchable. And hit and miss, I found it pretty enjoyable. So, what do you need to know from the Valiant comics before you watch this out of continuity movie? Well, you obviously need to know who Ninjak is. The first thing I would point out is you don't need to know anything about Harbinger. The only character from the entire Harbinger universe that is relevant here in this movie is the character of Livewire, and she's depicted in such a self-contained way that you really don't need to read any of the Harbinger comics or anything about them. Who else is in this? The Eternal Warrior, Gilad, is in this, but again, you don't need to know much about his backstory. Exo Manowar is in this, but again, you can get away with it without knowing much about his backstory. It's pretty bizarre, obviously a Viking in a suit of armor, but you can kind of get on board with that. Quantum and Woody are not in this. You don't need to know any Quantum and Woody at all. Shadow Man is in this, but only Shadow Man. No Dr. Mirage, no Punk Mambo, nothing like that. Archer and Armstrong are in this movie, and in that sense, that got a bit confusing. with absolutely no background or context to who they are and what their powers are. They're actually quite jarring on screen. Like with the Eternal Warrior, he's a dude in a suit of armor with a sword. You're like, okay, right, this is a barbarian guy, fine, whatever. Exo Manowar is basically Thor, who, by the way, is played by an actor who looks just like Chris Pratt in Iron Man armor. Yeah, fine, you can get on board with that. But Archer and Armstrong, it was one of the few bits I had to pause and actually explain to my partner, and be like, this is what their powers are. She was like, well, that's rubbish, which is understandable. But those are, I think, the main key parts from the Valiant universe that are in this. I wouldn't worry about knowing about stuff like Divinity or any other characters like that. Literally, the ones that I said are the only ones you need to actually, I'd say, worry about. Um, So, what's it about? Ninjak basically ends up in a position where he is forced to go up against all his colleagues in Unity and the rest of the Valiant universe, and is pretty decent. He goes from A to B, he steals B, he tries to get to C, and everyone tries to stop him. And it's pretty cool. It's reasonably well acted. One thing I will say is the main actor in it, so the guy that actually plays Ninjak is someone called Michael Rowe, who I've never actually heard of before. I don't know anything about the cast in this at all. I've never seen them before, but apparently Michael Rowe is actually quite well regarded. He's won some awards, and he's quite a decent, serious actor, which I'm willing to believe because he does a really good job in this. What else can I say? One of the main antagonists is Roku. There's actually another antagonist as well, which I'm not going to spoil for you, but Roku turns up in the first couple of minutes. I hate what they do with Roku. I mean, look at this. Look at it. This is what she looks like in the movie. It's terrible. I've watched a lot of porn in my time. This looks like low budget sci-fi porn. This is not good. This is not good. Roku in the comics looks like this. She looks awesome. She's really cool. She's got great powers. Not this kind of low budget, terrible wig, kind of poor makeup scenario. Again, this is as much down to the low budget as it is anything else. But also her writing, her characterization, the movie doesn't do it well. It does not do it well. So it starts off with some decent action. It carries on. You have the various characters getting introduced. I will point out, Bloodshot in this movie looks ridiculous. It looks like just some short, slightly overweight dude in really bad makeup. It reminds me of the Justice League America movie from 1994. If you haven't seen the Justice League of America movie from 1994, by all means check it out. It's terrible. But Bloodshot reminds me of that kind of standard here. It just wasn't very good. I know a lot of people don't like Vin Diesel, and I know a lot of people didn't enjoy Vin Diesel's Bloodshot movie, but I stand by the fact that that was a good movie, and the first half or two-thirds of it was solid and really, really strong. And his depiction of Bloodshot was really, really good. And if you don't agree with me, that's fine. Watch this. Watch Ninja versus the Valiant Universe, and you will agree with me because the Bloodshot in this just looks well. He just looks ridiculous. Other than that, we have the players I mentioned. We've got Shadow Man, we've got Exo Manowar, we've got like a smattering of some of the key players from this universe. Like I said, barring Quantum and Woody, no Harbinger at all in any regard, and therefore no hardcore or anything like that. Um, the one thing I want to say about this movie, because I don't want to sit here saying it's terrible. I don't think it's terrible. It's definitely watchable. I watched it with someone who knew nothing about Valiant. My partner watched it with me, and she was just like, "Okay, I've no idea what this is. Fine." She humors me. We watch it. Keep in mind, when we watched Wonder Woman 1984 together, she turned around 10 minutes in and she was like, I hope you know this movie is shit. And I was like, yeah, I can immediately tell this movie is terrible. That's Wonder Woman 1984 for you. This movie, the whole way through, she was like, yeah, this is fine. This is watchable. Like, it's not great. But given we watched Mortal Kombat and enjoyed it, this is definitely something we can watch and enjoy. Apart from one bit in the middle. There's one bit in the middle of this film. I'm not going to give spoilers as much as I can, but it's essentially a scene where the main character Ninjak is in the mirror talking to himself. And when he's talking to himself, he's saying a couple of things. He's essentially kind of like bemoaning the situation that he's in, and you have to keep in mind that as well. At this point, we've already established that his what he sees, Roku can see. She can basically see through his eyes, for want of a better term. So, given that, he basically just starts talking about what he thinks and what's going on, and you kind of see that scene. But it's basically a brilliant, brilliant scene. And I'll run through what the dialogue is. This won't really spoil it for you. If you're very sensitive to spoilers, obviously skip the next couple of minutes. But this dialogue is brilliant, and the performance is brilliant. So Ninjak, Colin King, is looking in the mirror, and he just starts speaking to himself, and he goes, "Sometimes I think about the time we spent together. We had some fun. I know I wasn't very good at expressing it, but I did feel something for you. But when I see you now and what you've become, it just makes me want to puke." Now, those sentences are sentences he's saying knowing that Roku can see him, but at the same time, he's saying it to his reflection in the mirror. And that last bit about being sickened by what he sees, that starts to hint at where the conversation is going. Because what he says next is, "I have no idea what is going through that crazy mind of yours. I don't know if you feel like I somehow betrayed you or left you behind. It doesn't matter. Vivian had absolutely nothing to do with this. You could have just taken her hostage. You could have taken her with the others." Now, this obviously is clearly aimed at Roku, but then keep in mind, Roku then sort of like the camera cuts to her for a second, you see her for a second, and then it goes back, and now it's just Colin King looking into his own eyes, his own reflection. And keep in mind what he says next: "You killed her. You killed her." And then he punches the mirror and breaks it. And then he's looking at the shattered mirror, and he's looking at his own reflection, broken into these kind of like splintered images of himself. And he just says quietly, "You're a pathetic coward. And you know what? You always were." And then he spits on himself. He spits on the mirror. He spits on his reflection. It's a brilliant scene. It's really well composed and really well put together because he's speaking to Roku, but also there are aspects where you know he's speaking to himself. And you know what he's saying about being sickened by himself, about blaming himself, about viewing himself as a coward and a failure. You can tell there's an aspect there where he's talking to himself as much as he's talking to Roku. It's really, really good. If you ever watched a movie like Face Off, which plays a lot with the idea of transferred identity, mirrors, conversations about duality, it's very similar to the movie Face Off. Or if you want to go for the real deep cut, the movie Hard Target, which is really kind of the precursor to Face Off. But it's a great scene, and I was blown away. I paused it, turned to my partner, and I was like, "That was fucking awesome!" And she was like, "Yeah, that was really good." It felt like that 3 or 4 minutes was written, directed, and just put together by just a different team. It's a level above the rest of the movie. And if nothing else, I'd recommend watching this movie just to get to that scene and kind of be caught up in it and see what performance for Michael Rowe is, because it's really impressive. Anyway, there's the movie. It's not available on DVD. It's just available on the internet. It's completely free. And where does that leave us? Well, that leaves us with the next part of this video, which is after watching this, I read the single issues. So when it comes to Ninjak versus the Valiant Universe, it was released as a 4-issue miniseries at the same time as the live-action web series is basically dropping. So it came out in sort of like early 2018 to mid 2018. It's 4 single issues. Written by someone called Elliot Rahal, I've no idea who that is. Written by someone called Joe Bennett, no idea who that is. Artwork is very competent. Mirrors. The covers are very competent and average as well. As a story, it basically quite closely follows the web series, pretty much beat by beat. A couple of scenes are done slightly different dialogue or slightly different angles or perspectives, but basically it's all exactly the same thing. A lot of the action scenes are obviously truncated. We're making a 17-minute web series into a 4-issue comic on an 80-page trade paperback. But in that sense, it hits all the same beats, does all the same things. It's just a very stripped down, pared down version of the web series. In that sense, I'd say it's actually slightly inferior to watching the web series, especially because do you know that whole scene that I just waxed lyrical about, him in the mirror talking to himself? That's not in this at all, which was just ridiculous. So I read this and I was like, well, that's a poor show. Um, what I would say is if you're interested in Ninjak versus the Valiant Universe and you don't know if you want to watch it or if you want to read it, my recommendation, and I say this as the guy who reads everything, is to watch it. The movie is actually better than the comic, and the movie is actually it's okay. If you're the sort of person that can watch the Mortal Kombat 1995 movie and enjoy it, then this is on a level. This is on a level. It was good. It was fun. Don't put it in the same ballpark as the Bloodshot movie. It's a completely different budget. It's a completely different um, kind of intent. The Ninjak versus Valiant Universe movie or web series is very much a proof of concept, I suspect, to try to convince DMG Entertainment that they can make a Valiant cinematic universe. The comic is just the light diet version of that, and as such, doesn't really hit any beats that are especially interesting. It doesn't do anything that the web series hasn't already done, and in fact, in every case, the web series did it better. So I'd recommend just checking out the web series if you can. But if you are a completionist and you want to read or collect physically the single trade issues that make up Ninja versus the Valiant Universe, you've got 4 issues. I've been showing you the covers just now. You can pick it up as a trade paperback. But keep in mind, this is entirely out of continuity with the rest of the Valiant Universe. It's completely self-contained, completely standalone in and of itself. It was only there as a proof of concept for like a future cinematic universe, Valiant Avengers sort of movie. And yeah, I'm not going to keep it in my collection. I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. And this is where this sits. Okay, went a little bit long there, especially given I wasn't showing you a deluxe hardcover, but hopefully that was useful, and hopefully that encourages some people. If you're sticking with my series this far, hopefully you're a bit of a Valiant nut. Check out the Valiant Universe versus Ninjak web series, because it's definitely worth a watch, if nothing else. What's our homework for next time? Well, believe it or not, there is still out of continuity stuff for this era that we need to read and review. So, next time round, we are going to be looking at Q2, Quantum and Woody, which is actually a mini series of Quantum and Woody, which was released after the 2012 reboot and has its own deluxe edition, which I do not own. But it's completely out of continuity, and in fact, it continues the continuity from the 90s Valiant Comics run. But listen, we'll talk about it more next time. What I'd say is what we're looking for now next is Q2, Quantum and Woody, the miniseries. Try to check it out or pick it up because we're reading it for next week's episode. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please follow me on Twitter at I am Thomas Judge, where I will post a daily review of whatever comics I've been reading. You can get an idea of what I'm up to on the channel. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and checking out my prose novel about superheroes. It's a completely original piece of work. The first episode in it is called Arrivals, and the series as a whole is called No Gods or Kings. You can find an excerpt of that on my website, nogodsorkings.com. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.